Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the SportzMoose Media Podcast. Ricky Dean, along with Rick Burkett. Rick's joining me again from the city by the bay. No, not San Fran. I'm talking about Mobile, Alabama. Rick's in the house from Mobile as we get a chance now. You know, we're a week away from discussing all the state championship games in classes 7A down to 1A, and those games that took place, you know, in Tuscaloosa about 10 days or so ago, and all those are wrapped up. And so now, you know, right off the bat, now everybody finds out where they will be playing football over the next couple of years as the realignments of the Alabama High School Athletic Association regions have been announced, and you got some schools that are probably maybe in a little shock right now, and maybe some even with their lips pooched out a little bit because of the movement that they had to make. But it is what it is. You know, I mean, you know, the Alabama High School Athletic Association, they realign these schools in all these regions and classifications. They do the realignment every 2 years. And so this will be for the upcoming 2024 and the 2025 seasons. So we've got some changes to talk about, and we got some people staying where they are. But anyway, we're going to go through 7A all the way down to 1A in Region 1. And the reason we're doing Region 1 is because in our area of the country, this southwest Alabama, the lower Alabama region, we're talking Mobile, Baldwin, Washington, Clark, Escambia, Monroe, Wilcox, this area of the country. These are teams that play in this area down here, and if we did the whole state, we'd be here for a while. So we're trying to hold the podcast down. We want to talk about the teams that we're familiar with, and in all of these teams in these Region 1s of all these classifications, we've had some dealings with them throughout our lives dealing with high school football. So that's why we're most comfortable talking about this grouping of teams.
Yeah, and you know, probably need to do a little translation for our international audience on what pooching your lips out means.
Well, they'll figure it out.
Pouting. Yeah, that means pouting.
Yeah, you can Google that. If you're not sure what pooching your lips out means, then by all means Google it. It's probably on Google. Everything else is. So you can Google it. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I remember during one of our football broadcasts back during the year, I used the term pucker factor. And I got a text about that from a buddy of mine, and he said, "I can't believe that you used the word pucker, used the term pucker factor." I said, "Well, it was relevant to what I was saying." He said, "Well, who knew what you were talking about?" I said, "They'll figure it out." I said, "Because they probably do like we do everything now anyway. They hear a term that's used, and you're going to Google it and find out what it is." So, you know, that's what I do most of the time anyway. Catch myself doing that all the time.
Well, in this region 1-7A, there's liable to be some puckering and some pooching.
Yeah, no doubt. And I. You know, the one move that really jumps out that's really, you've got 0-10 Robertsdale that's jumping from 6A Region 1 into 7A Region 1. And, you know, you and I talked about this is a strong region. I mean, you look at the teams that are in there. You've got Alma Bryant, who didn't have that great of a season this past season, but have been a good team before and have the potential to be a good team again. You've got Baker, they were a playoff team. Daphne was a playoff team. Davidson was a playoff team, and Mary G. Montgomery was a playoff team and actually your region champion. So your Class 7A Region 1, let me run through them real quick so we've got all of them. We've got Alma Bryant, Baker, Daphne, Davidson, Fairhope, Foley, Mary G. Montgomery, and Robertsdale. So that'll be the group of schools making up 7A Region 1. And, of course, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams. So they'll have 7 region games, and then they'll have 3 non-region games during the year. So really, I mean, it's not a very, very difficult region when you look at the win totals of all your teams from last year. You know, they were about 500 as a overall region as far as wins and losses. But at the top, especially when you look at Mary G. Montgomery, who had a phenomenal year, and then you've also got Baker, who had an incredible year as well. Then right there at the top, you got 2 very good teams, and then it'll be some other teams that are not quite as good or weren't quite as good this past year, but they'll be battling for those last 2 spots, hopefully to make it into the playoffs themselves.
Well, just historically, Fairhope's a good team. I know they only went 3-7, but they had very close games. But these teams are historically are playoff type teams, and that's Daphne, Davidson, Fairhope, and Foley. Now, all of a sudden, Baker and Mary G. Montgomery have gotten good. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that are it's going to be it's sort of like the next region we're going to talk about in 6A. You got 6 teams that it's going to be a knockdown drag out for them 4 playoff spots. And those are all very good football teams. Even though Fairhope went 3-7, they had some close games, and they're a good team. And so is Foley. So it's going to be a Thunderdome type situation in that region next year.
Yeah, well, Foley's always been, we've known about Foley for a long time, especially being old Atmore Blue Devils, and we can remember battles that we had with Foley back years ago, and Foley, Foley of recent, now they were 500 this past year, but the past years, recent years, Foley's had some really good football teams over there, and some really good athletes come out of that Baldwin County area, especially around Foley High School and everything.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely right. So it should be a humdinger next year. That's a new word to look up.
Well, let's talk about Class 6A now as we continue rolling through this reclassification, realignment of all these schools that are jumping around. They found out today where they will be participating in high school football in the state of Alabama next year. And changes, the only change in Class 6A Region 1 is going to be Gulf Shores, who, here you go. You've got teams that have battled each other. Saraland was the region champion, so they qualified for the playoffs. And then all of a sudden you've got the Class 5A Region 1 champion from last year is now jumping from 5A Region 1 into 6A Region 1. So Saraland finished the region last year 14 with 14 wins, or actually overall record was 14 wins until the state championship game. They were 8-0 in the region. Gulf Shores was also 8-0 in their region, 15-0 on the year because Gulf Shores won the state championship. So you end up with Gulf Shores and Saraland, one team won a state championship, the other one played for a state championship and lost it in a very good football game last year, and or matter of fact, just about 10 days ago, as a matter of fact. But anyway, you've got those 2 teams that are now going to be facing each other in the same region, in the same classification. So if we look at all the people, all the schools in Class 6A Region 1, you've got Baldwin County, Blount, Gulf Shores is the newbie, McGill-Tulane, Murphy, Saraland, Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, and Theodore. And so now where you had Saraland, Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, and Theodore were all in the playoffs last year because they were all in Class 6A Region 1, well, you've got a 5th playoff team now that's been thrown in there, and that's Gulf Shores, and they're the defending state champion.
Yeah, and Gulf Shores, nobody even gave them a good game last year. They destroyed, in that 15-0 record, they destroyed everybody, 7 shutouts. And then you got, we refer to Saraland University of Saraland. at least one of the three best teams in the state. And then you consider that Theodore, St. Paul, Spanish Fort, Saraland, and Gulf Shores have all been to the state championship within recent history.
Yeah.
This is one tough region right here, and just throwing Gulf Shores in there. And of course, Spanish Fort didn't have a good year, but they won their playoff game. They did advance in the second round, so that's going to be a tough one too. That's going to be even tougher than the one we just got through talking about in 7A.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to follow right there, the 6A Region 1. It's just going to be, it's top heavy. And the way you know it's top heavy, if you look at the overall record of all the teams that participated or that are now 6A Region 1 teams, their overall 2023 record, 63-41. And so they won a good many more than they lost. So that's how you tell that is really a top-heavy region, and that's Class 6A Region 1 in the state of Alabama. So as we keep on looking at teams, let's go down to Class 5A now, as 5A is going to be interesting as well. And, these are just good football teams. A lot of these Region 1 schools, in whatever classification you're in, we've got several state champions that we're going to mention here as we go through the night tonight that are still playing in Region 1 in whichever classification they may fall into. And so really no newbies in Class 5A Region 1. Everything just stays the same. It's going to be BC Rain, Centronale, Alberta, Faith Academy, LaFleur, UMS Wright, Viger, and Williamson. And so those are your teams. They'll stay the same, but really good football teams. You've got three playoff teams. Actually, somebody fell out, and that was
Gulf Shores.
Yeah, that was Gulf Shores that jumped up. So you've only got three of those remaining playoff teams that were in last year. All of those went 1-1 in the playoffs. So you've got some playoff wins on paper there, and so I'm sure that all these teams that are left here in Class 5A Region 1, they're going, whew, boy, I'm glad that bunch is gone, and let Saraland deal with them. But that kind of lessens the load there in Class 5A Region 1.
Yeah, they're well, I just say that in good humor, but they're probably not very sorry to see Gulf Shores move on out of there.
No, they're glad to get them gone, I guarantee you. So that's really a good region, and so they'll be battling it out. Just looking at the numbers right now, you've got your three playoff teams that remain. You've got BC Rain, which was a very good team. They were 8-4. You've got you've got Centronale, that was kind of a middle of the road team, was not a playoff team. They were 6-4, but you've got Faith Academy at 8-4 that went to the playoffs, and UMS Wright at 7-5 that went to the playoffs. UMS Wright, Faith Academy, those two teams right there, those are very good football teams, and they've been joined now by BC Rain. So it's just going to be a matter now of who wants to step up and be that next team to occupy a playoff spot.
BC Rain's a very good football team last year. We talked about them getting their new stadium out there on Dolphin Island Parkway, and hey, they'll be a force to be reckoned with next year.
No doubt, and that's the way you build a program. If you put the facilities in place to make the kids, want to come, want to show up for practice, and want to play, then that just, makes the overall outlook of the program just look so much better.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So now let's talk about Class 4A. And so it's looking a little different than it did. It's got two new teams in Class 4A Region 1. One of them not really a surprise. One of them really surprised me today when I found this out. Anyway, your teams in Class 4A Region 1 for the upcoming season will be Escambia County, the Blue Devils, the Aggies of Jackson, Mobile Christian, which was not a surprise to me that they bumped up. they're the defending state 3A champion. So they just won a state championship, and now they've got to move up a classification. You've got Orange Beach, Satsuma, St. Michael, and here's the surprise to me, is it looks like you and I will be doing some radio for Class 4A football this year instead of Class 3A as the Neal Blue Eagles make the jump up a classification to Class 4A Region 1.
That's right, and of course the schedule hadn't come out yet, but you can be sure WS Neal's jumping up to this 4A. Their schedule is obviously going to change a lot, and some of those, especially some of the smaller teams like McIntosh and some of the others that like the out of conference, the Hillcrest Evergreens, that'll all drop off. So you and I won't be traveling to those kind of places. And we'll have a new round of venues to visit this coming football season, God willing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it, of course.
Well, I am too. And there are some familiar teams here. I mean, we've done games at Escambia County High School. I've done football from years back. I've been to Jackson, been to Mobile Christian, have never been to Orange Beach, but always enjoy a trip to the beach when I get one. I've been around Satsuma. Hadn't been to St. Michael, but I saw a piece of video from there that that everybody saw during the season too. I'm sure the T.R. Miller fans remember that. So anyway, that's going to be an interesting trip in its own right. But anyway, yeah, the Neal Blue Eagles. Well, that all these teams, you play who you're paired up with in your region. So we know we're going to have games either at or against Escambia County, at Atmore or away, and then you're going to be either at or away from Jackson. You may be at Mobile Christian. You're going to play Orange Beach. You're going to play Satsuma. You're going to play St. Michael. So that's 6 games, and so that means that Neal, with the only 6 region games, they're going to have an opportunity. You're going to throw T.R. Miller in there. So that's going to be one of their non-region games will be the T.R. Miller game, the Battle of Murder Creek. So it means that you got 3 spots that you're going to look to field games with. Very well could be who is remaining in Class 3A. It could be an AHSAA, could be a Monroe County. I mean, there are enough teams in the area right here that WS Neal will feel a very good schedule. I mean, they'll have a good schedule and they'll play a good group. This is a pretty good group of teams that they're going to play against here in this region, because you look at with Jackson and now Mobile Christian being added to that. And then you've got St. Michael and WS Neal themselves. I mean, the region themselves, the total win-loss record of this region from last year is one of the better of all the regions, Region 1s in Class 1A all the way up to 7A. The overall 2023 record, 50-28. So this is another one of those regions that you could actually refer to as being top-heavy. Well,
now, Region 3 has one more victory, but in terms of winning percentage, they also have more losses. Of the winning percentage, this is the number 1 region in the state, 50-28, based on 2023's record. Of course, in high school, you lose up to a third of your players every year when the seniors graduate. So each team truly is a new team. But so based on the 2023 record, as far as winning percentage, Region 1 is the highest in the state among 4A schools.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to following this Class 4A Region 1 group with WS Neal coming up in the fall. And, boy, I can't wait to get there. It just means that, hey, we get to see some new blood throughout the season and some old blood as well. We'll get to see some teams that we are very familiar with during the season in Class 4A Region 1.
You bet.
So as we move down to the region that Neal came out of, this is another region that Rick and I are very familiar with, and this is one of the you got a school that actually moved down a region, or moved down a classification. Actually, I should say, Bayside Academy, who was a Class 4A Region 1 school last year and a playoff team. They move from Class 4A Region 1 down to Class 3A Region 1, and they will basically replace W.S. Neal there. Bayside Academy, Cottage Hill Christian, Excel, Flomaton, Hillcrest Evergreen, Monroe County, and T.R. Miller also drops from Class 4A Region 1 down to Class 3A Region 1. So you're losing a team from Class 3A Region 1, but you're adding 2 pretty good football teams into that region. So, but you did lose Mobile Christian at least, so you got them kind of out of the way. But that's going to be a strong region still. With you got with the addition of Miller and Bayside to go along with Excel, Flomaton, Hillcrest, Evergreen, Cottage Hill Christian, and Monroe County. That's going to be a tough region. Yeah, it is. And like I said, they basically W.S. Neal and Mobile Christian moved up, and these 2 moved down. And but it's going to be a tough one. They get rid of Neal and Mobile Christian, but they pick up historically and perennial power of T.R. Miller and Bayside. So to be building, and we'll be covering them close. Like I said, we know lots of those schools, and that Hillcrest Evergreen team turned out to be a good team last year. We knew they were all along, and so I don't know what they're losing in terms of seniors and things like that, but they'll still be a good team. Yeah, they will be a very good football team. The coach up there has got them going in the right direction, and they'll just continue, winning ways that we've talked about it about all the schools that we've covered here of recent. When you start to win, you get kids that are willing to come out and participate, and that just helps your season. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to play for a winner. So as we move now to Class 2A Region 1, let's look at it. And really no changes in 2A Region 1 at all. You've got Bayshore Christian, Central of and I've always messed this up. I want you to help me out because I know you know this area of the country up there. Is it Central of Hayneville or is it Haneyville?
Haneyville.
Is it Haneyville?
Haneyville. Yeah, Haneyville. Yeah. Okay, all right. Haneyville.
And actually, Central they do jump up. They jumped up from 1A Region 4, and they will now be in Class 2A Region 1. So you've got Central there, and you've got Chickasaw, Clark County, J.U. Blackshear, St. Luke's, and Washington County. So of the teams there, your playoff teams from last year were Chickasaw, Clark County, who ended up, I think Clark County sandbagged a little bit. They ended up with an overall record of 7-6, but they were 5-0 in the region, and they won 2 games in the playoffs. They went to the third round. They won the first 2 and lost in the third round. And then you've got St. Luke's, who's a good team. They were 6-5 overall. They were 4-1 in their region. And Washington County, who also had a very good football team and ended up making the playoffs last year. So a good bunch of teams there in Class 2A Region 1.
Yeah, that Clark County bunch, that I think they're going to be my pick for the possibly winning that area again. They had a overall 7-6 record, but their first 5 games were all against teams up in the classifications. So I think they'll probably be the forerunner for that region next year. Yeah, well, they definitely, they played up, and they played teams like Jackson and Thomasville and those schools that are right there in that Clark County area. But by playing up, in order to make yourself better, you got to play teams that are better than you are. You don't want to play cupcakes all year, and then all of a sudden you get thrust into the playoffs and you don't know what it's all about. I guarantee you, by the end of the season last year, Clark County, they knew what it was all about. They had played some very tough regular season competition, and that boded them well going into the playoffs and made it all the way to the third round. Just a couple of years ago, Clark County was a state champion. Yeah, and I mean that's why they went so far into the playoffs last year, into the third round. They played those tough games to start with. Sometimes you got to be careful as a coach, because you don't let your team get down on themselves. Just let them know, look, we're playing good teams. It's going to turn around for us. And he did that. Him and his coaching staff did that. So they're a good football team, and I just about be willing to bet you they're right there competing for the region championship next year.
Yeah, and when you got good groups of kids and you've got a good coaching staff that believes in positive reinforcement. Those kids knew that they were playing some teams that were kind of going to outclass them just a little bit as far as, outsize them, outspeed them. You got you got schools that are right there around you. You realize that they just have more to pick from, so they've got a few more athletes than you do. But if you go through it with the right mindset and say, you know what, we're playing for a bigger picture here. We're going through this thing to make it, and to make it so that when we are playing schools that are equal to our size, that we're gonna fare well against them. If you can sell that to them, then you can do what you want to with them, and that's exactly what that coaching staff did at Clark County. They sold them on the fact that, look, we're going to play up, we're going to take some lumps, but when it comes time for us to go, we're going to go, and we'll be better for it. And they proved that during the season last year.
That's right.
So let's look at the last classification now, Class 1A, Region 1. And it stays the same. Nobody new. Everybody stays right where they're at. You got Fruitdale. You got J.F. Shields. Leroy, the defending Class 1A state champion in the state of Alabama. Marengo, McIntosh, Milry, who's a very good football team, Southern Choctaw, and Sweetwater. And so your four playoff teams that are left, you've got the defending state champion Leroy Bears at 14-0. You've got Milry, a very good football team. They ended up the year 9-3, 5-1. The only loss that they had in their region was to Leroy. They ended up going 2 games in 2 rounds into the playoffs. Southern Choctaw was a playoff team as well. They lost in the first round, but they're a good football team. And of course Sweetwater, a very good football team. They ended the season 9-2. They were 5-0 in the region last year, but they ended up 1-1 in the playoffs, so they made it through to the second round. So very good football there in Class 1A Region 1. And if you just read those names like Milry and Leroy, Sweetwater, I mean, those schools are perennial.
Southern Choctaw.
Yeah, Southern Choctaw. I mean, those are perennial powerhouses in Class 1A football in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting region to keep up with, and looking forward to keeping up with it.
Well, and that covers everything, Rick. I mean, that covers everything in the southwest Alabama area here in our neck of the woods. I tell you one thing, it's getting starting to get wintertime outside. I know you've noticed that, and of course we've got bowl games, college bowl games happening. We've got the college, playoff system being what it is, and the Alabama Crimson Tide, of course, made it. A lot of people are complaining because Florida State got left out, and I hate it for Florida State. I mean, I really do. But the decision, there's a lot of hate going on about Alabama making it in, because there's just a lot of disdain with people kind of being worn out by Alabama getting things handed to them or whatever. That's what I've heard of recent. But Alabama didn't get anything handed to them. They made it in. There was a group of people that made that decision. Alabama didn't make it themselves. They didn't force their way into the room and get in. But just looking at things, the way things are going, it wouldn't surprise me the way Alabama played toward the end of the season. If Alabama wasn't actually, I know the Rose Bowl game with Michigan, that's going to be a push game right there. I mean, that could go either way, but I really look for Alabama to be playing for a national championship, as I think they're going to beat Michigan. I don't think Michigan is going to be prepared for the speed of a Southeastern Conference defense because they've played in the Big Ten all year.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. I think that Michigan's a good team, and of course, as long as Alabama continues to improve, and which they starting with really the Ole Miss game, I think they got better each game and played a pretty hard schedule. As far as everybody thinking Florida State should be in over Alabama, I mean, I've just got two words for you, and that's sour grapes. I mean, the ACC champion is not the equivalent to the SEC champion in anybody that's being truthful's book. I mean, it's not. And nobody thinks Florida State could beat Alabama either. And if they say that, then I just think, like I said, they're being obtuse.
Well, and I like the use of the word there. But one of the things too that you can look at is, to be quite honest with you, if I looked at what was left atop of college football at the end of the year, if anybody has a reason to really kind of be upset, it may even be Georgia. Because to be honest with you, I think Georgia, with what they've got to prove, I mean that game between them and Florida State in the Orange Bowl could probably get ugly. It really could, because Georgia's loaded. Georgia had won 29 games in a row and they lost one, and they were a very good football team. And, I'm not sure that 3-point win by Alabama, that game could have gone the other way, had the big tight end and McConkey, the wide receiver. Had the two of them, had Bowers and the wide receiver not been healthy, that game could have been different. I mean, it very well could have. But you have to play with the kids that you've got. And that's kind of the way that Florida State has to look at that too. Yes, if Florida State still got their starting quarterback, then yes, they are probably one of the top 4 teams in the country. And there you go. But with a second quarterback. Go ahead. Well, I mean, I was just going to say, with their quarterback, they're one of the 4. But without them, and we can say what we want to say, and I mean, the truth of the matter is, and I don't even have a dog in the fight, other than I'm just an Alabama fan, and I'm glad that they're in. But the truth of the matter is that it ended up being with Florida State not having their starting quarterback, the star of their offense on the field. It ended up being a decision about TV ratings and money. And that's why Florida State didn't make it in, because basically ESPN controls the college football playoffs. Might drop here, because I mean that's the truth of the matter. I mean it ends up being, the bottom line is it all ends up being about the money.
Yeah, and the way I feel about that is, my personal opinion is Alabama deserved to be in. Florida State deserved to be in. But I don't. Some of what I don't understand is and I understand everybody's got Bama fatigue. I mean, because they've been so good for so long now, going on 17 years. I mean, they've been the team to beat in college football. But I mean, you can't expect Alabama fans to apologize for getting chosen to go to the playoffs. I mean, I think Alabama earned the right to be in the playoffs, and all the reasons are legion as to why they got in. But they don't owe anybody an apology for getting in. They didn't cheat Georgia. That's just sour grapes. I mean, is Alabama supposed to have paid off every referee and crew in every conference in order to win all their football games? Well, that's just ludicrous. And honestly, it's just poor sportsmanship and sour grapes for people to keep hanging their hat on that. The fact is, Alabama earned the right to get into the playoffs. Washington earned the right to get in. Michigan earned the right to get in. Texas certainly earned the right to get in. And Florida State earned the right to get in, but there's only 4 spots. The committee's made up of a hodgepodge of people from different conferences, and they chose Alabama. So Alabama doesn't know anybody in their politics for getting into the playoffs. Like you said, they're very possible that they could win the whole thing, just like they did back in 2017.
Well, and a lot of people, I've heard people say this, and I'm gonna say this portion of it, and then we'll move on and get to something else. But because this isn't a college football show, but I just wanted to bring that up since we are getting into bowl season and everything like that. The thing is I was talking to a gentleman at church the other morning, and one of the things that we both looked at each other and said is that, this year, the number 5 team, the team that got left out of the mix, is mad. Well, guess who's going to be mad next year? The 13th
the number 13 team.
The number 13 team is going to be pitching a fit, because they should have been one of the top 12. I mean, It's just everybody can't go. There are no participation trophies, okay? Mm-hmm. You got to earn your way in, and you earn your way in by being one of those right now top 4 selected, which Alabama is one of those, and next year you got to make it into the top 12. You got to be one of those 12 that get selected. 13, you're sitting at the house. You can go play in the Blue Bonnet Bowl, whatever you want to do, but you're not going to the playoffs. So if you want in, play your way in. That's how you get there.
Yep, that's exactly right. Do they still have the Blue Bonnet Bowl? I don't think that's a bowl.
I don't think they do anymore. They used to have that used to be a bowl.
It was
back
in Houston. Yeah, it
the
was.
Blue Bonnet Bowl.
I don't know if it's still going.
No, I don't think it is. They've all changed, things all around. It's probably the Meow Mix Cat Bowl now or something, that they that there ain't no telling what it is. They've got so many bowls now. There's like 40 something. I mean, there's almost, talk about participation trophies, is if they keep on, if there was enough TV time left and allotted, which there is with all this streaming and everything else, they ought to just make enough bowl games so it doesn't matter if you win a game or not. Everybody gets to go to a bowl. That way you make it like, society is now. Everybody gets a participation trophy. You're 0-10, we don't care. We'll take you. We'll put you in a bowl game against another 0-10. We'll call that the
give them a trophy and a pat on the fanny and say, good job.
Yeah, good job. You did good. You're just losers. I don't know. You just, that's the way things are. That's the way things is going these days anyway. Everybody wants a participation trophy. So, but anyway, with all that being said, we talked about, and we've talked about this before, about the SportzMoose Outdoors portion of this show, and we're going to get that started. We're still in the planning stages, just a little bit on it, but as a matter of fact, maybe, I don't think this week, because I think it's going to be, it's going to be a little airish out. But
it might be a little cool this Wednesday.
But yeah, we are going to get out and do some things as far as in the outdoors. One of the things Rick and I both love to do, and that's fish. And so we're going to get out and try to do a little fishing. And, one of the things that we've talked about is we want to go places that we like to fish. We like to be out in the outdoors anyway and just talk about things in general. It may be sports. It may be something else. But anyway, we just want to get out and just kind of share the outdoors with people, and probably go out and fish some. There's several different places that we can go, and we'll talk about those. And what we really want to relay to people is the fact that you can enjoy the outdoors right around you and enjoy the creation that God the Father has provided for all of us, and you can do it without spending a whole lot of money, and without, you can just get out and enjoy it. I mean, and hey, who knows? You might get lucky too and catch a fish. That's why they call it fishing, because you go out and you try to catch a fish. You may not catch one every time, because if you did, they would call it catching. They don't call it catching. They call it fishing. So we're going to get out and fish, and we're going to try to catch fish and try to, kind of what I would like to do, Rick, and I know Rick's a lot better fisherman than I am. I mean, I heard this said, about tying fishing knots and stuff like that. I can't tie a knot, so I tie a lot. I just keep tying knots in a.
You keep putting hitches in it till it doesn't slip.
Yeah, that's right. And so by doing that, I can usually get a hook to stay on a line or whatever. But anyway, what we want to do is we want to get out and share fishing with people and share the enjoyment of fishing with people. And we want to prove to you that you can take, very little money and invest very little money in some tackle and in some equipment and be able to go out and just enjoy God's creation, enjoy the outdoors, fishing from a bank. You don't need a $40,000 bass boat to go fish. There's ponds and creeks and everything right around us, and we drive over them every day. I drive over them every day on the way to work. And so we just want to be able to share that with a good group of people, and hopefully somewhere along the way we'll make it entertaining, and we'll make you want to tune in as it gives us something to talk about while we're getting ready to talk about football next fall. So that's where we're at on that. And Rick, man, I appreciate you, buddy. You're one of my peeps. Rick and I go way back. Way back. And we've been lifelong friends, and we just have a good time being around each other, and we've been in bad times together and good times together, and I just want you to know that I appreciate you, and I want to tell you because, of course, we'll talk again before then, but I want to tell you here in the open forum, I want to wish you and Miss Janet a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and you guys, that you guys are a couple of my dearest friends.
Well, I appreciate that, Ricky. I do. I love you, brother, and we wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year too. And we're all here by God's grace, and we're all blessed to draw a breath. If you're drawing a breath, you're blessed, and God's got something left for you to do. So
that's right.
Cheer up and have a good Christmas season, everyone. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that was the next thing I really wanted to say is just everybody that listens in, it don't matter where you are, and you could be listening from anywhere in the whole wide world, because this podcast goes out all over the place. And we just want to wish you and your family, each of you, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And remember to keep Christ in Christmas, that our Savior Jesus Christ, we're celebrating His birthday. He was born, and He came and lived on this earth for 33 and some years, 33 and a half years or so before He was nailed to a cross, because He died for our sins, and He did that for us. So what we need to do for Him is live for Him and go into the world and just better glorify His name. And if we can do that through this podcast, then we're thankful for being able to do that. And we just thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the SportzMoose Media Podcast. Rick, it's been a good one, buddy, and we'll get together this week, and we'll plan next week's show coming up pretty soon.
All right, Ricky. I appreciate it, my friend.
Yes, sir.